All right, and welcome back to Buried Cinema.
I'm Steve.
I'm Tom Caper.
And I'm Nate Griffiths. Did you forget your last name?
I did, yeah.
In honor of Albin?
Yeah, I'm pretending I'm Albin. So.
Okay, yeah. Albin's not with us this week.
I'm this week's Madonna.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Or Prince, you're just a symbol.
Yeah.
All right. This week we are reviewing the Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. We're going to be discussing as a topic the film franchise and kind of its rise to prominence. We're going to be adding Voyage of the Dawn Treader to our Flickchart account, and then we're going to be looking forward to Tron. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the...
Dawn Treader, then we're going to go to our review.
And past that, eventually reaching Aslan's Country.
I can feel Tom's
He's
pain
emanating. So angry about what has happened. So in order to get that anger out, we're going to turn to Tom for his opening review. Thomas?
I think this movie is a classic.
Wait, what?
It's a classic example of a terrible adaptation of a great book.
Okay, alright. But I'm
One of my biggest problems with a lot of adaptations, especially of children's, like good children's literature, is that they want to adapt this story to film, but then they do not use any of the author's language. Like, there's no dialogue from the book in the movie.
Really?
There is at the end, which
Until
we talked about, which was it's really strange.
The only dialogue taken from the book is at the end, and it was the one piece of dialogue that I was sure they were
We
not
thought they were
going
going
to
to cut out.
What was it?
Because it's so blatantly...
Where he's like, I go by another name.
I go by another name in your country, and you need to look for me there. That's it. That's all. Yeah. We were sure they were going to cut that out, because that's very blatant in your face,
The mistake this movie specifically made, it made a bunch. I mean, it had its moments, but for every good choice the filmmakers made, they made like 10 bad ones. They had... The book itself is very episodic, but it has very strong character arcs all the way through. And if they focused on the character arcs, then they would have gotten it right. Instead, what they did was they added a ton of plot that's not from the book. The Mist is not from the book. The White Witch is not in the book.
Mm-hmm. The people getting captured is not in the book. The stuff
about the people disappearing is not in the book.
I don't remember the book.
The thing about the swords is not in the book. And then they rearrange events in the book, which would be fine, except that the way they rearrange it shows me that they totally missed the point of the book.
It's one of those things when you have an adaptation where you change so many things.
Yeah.
Eventually, the smaller changes just become so much more annoying, because the major changes with adding the plot lines with the Mist and the people being taken away and the White Witch is annoying. Whereas if they had only done the things with the swords and rearranging the island a little bit, might have been able to overlook that. Obviously, it seemed like at the end they have that fight with the dragon and the sea monster, which they wanted a big climax where a dragon fights a sea monster.
Yeah.
I can understand that as a change, wanting to,
And who doesn't want to see a dragon fight a sea monster?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
and you know what? That was kind of cool. The sea monster looked really cool.
Sea monster was cool.
Yeah.
Sea monster looked... Yeah, that was probably my...
Mm-hmm.
The part where
I hesitate to say favorite.
Part where it opened up.
Yeah, that was disgusting. That was awful.
That was a cool fight.
In like a good way.
I wanted to see that, so I understand that.
I had to rearrange down somewhat to do that.
Love it. But, so let's talk a little bit about franchise, because it really does seem like franchises are becoming really quite big.
Well, the fantasy franchise.
Especially the fantasy franchise,
right.
yeah.
We're talking about, yeah.
And I mean, and that is due, we've tried to avoid it, but that's definitely due to the success of Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings before it. Has really tried it.
Which both started in 2001.
Yeah.
And then...
I think Lord of the Rings... I don't know if Harry Potter probably... They were hoping for a franchise. But, I mean, that depended on the success of the first one. Lord of the Rings, they're like, this is going to be a franchise, regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, they filmed it all before the first one even... I mean, so that... Lord of the Rings sort of started the idea of determining that this is going to be a franchise, regardless.
And it set off that idea, which is Pirates then picked it up.
Yeah.
That idea, which, by the way, they're doing that again. They're filming 2 more Pirates films simultaneously. So this is a
Pirates of the
huge,
Caribbean.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
It's like Pirates.
This is
Sid
a
Meier's
huge
Pirates.
trend of making large franchises and just
hoping they do well.
Yeah, they're doing 2 more Indiana Jones. They have said
Is Harrison Ford going to be in it?
I
actually hope he isn't.
They might transfer to Shia LaBeouf.
That could be okay.
The thought.
No, that could be
Yeah.
okay. That could
No, it can't.
The other thing,
Shia
even
LaBeouf.
in cartoons, you're definitely seeing. I mean, Shrek went to the Shrek the Third just because you got to have a trilogy.
Well, they've always made sequels, after the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah,
the trend is mainly like the children's fantasy kind of stuff.
But I mean, yeah, what do you think is the distinction between sequels and a franchise? I mean, a franchise is planned out from the beginning, whereas a sequel is like, oh, this did well, let's capitalize on that. You know what I mean?
Not always, because franchises. I mean, some franchises. James Bond is.
That's true.
That one started in
Yeah.
'62
Yeah.
when they're still going on that.
For me, a franchise has this sense of normally it's the there's a longer extension than just a sequel or just a trilogy. There's several, you keep going. You have something like James Bond, where you're able to switch actors. Batman, Spider-Man, things like this. But it's larger than
That's
itself.
different than taking a series of books, like the Chronicles of Narnia or the Harry Potter books, where the films are going to follow a very definite succession. Whereas with like something like James Bond, it's like, all right, well, let's start thinking of ideas for the next story.
Yeah.
Finally, they've actually started going back to the books now.
And which they didn't do in order either.
No.
So.
What are you going to do? But I mean,
the last book they adapted was the first book in the series.
But I think the franchise. I think the franchise is a problem because now you make a sequel regardless of the success of the previous one.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, James Bond is actually a great example that I hadn't thought of. They make another James Bond even if the previous one tanked.
Right.
That's not the case for Shrek or, I mean, they made the sequel to Shrek because it was successful.
Because it was successful. They're done now. They have...
Yeah.
But some of his other... I mean, like we've talked about The Rock. I even kind of like Armageddon.
Armageddon's not a bad movie.
I enjoy it.
Armageddon is pretty bad, but
I enjoy it for its kind of
bad
cheesy badness. Who doesn't want to leave Bruce Willis on a meteoroid thing?
No kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good. The other thing is...
Say, we gotta save the world. Let's get some miners.
The Island, which is a movie of his that was just kind of glossed over. Dare I say, buried.
That's a decent...
I enjoyed that movie. I actually think that's the best thing he's done.
It was also a ripoff of an older movie.
Well, there are no new ideas. So what?
There was actually a huge lawsuit about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because it was... Well, I won't go into it.
Well,
also,
in defense...
It was on Mystery Science Theater. It was a movie that was on Mystery Science Theater.
Oh,
But
yeah.
The point is that this guy wrote a screenplay, and this is basically his screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
He, like, beginning to end, it's like his ideas.
Oh. Well, but...
And he didn't get a cent for it.
It had Scarlett Johansson in it. So
And
that
great.
kind of that fixes it pretty
And
much
Sean
everything.
Bean.
His movies usually have redeeming
Giant
qualities,
Blue
but
How do we end up defending Michael Bay?
I don't know! What is going on?
you tell me.
Here, any chance?
No.
That's acceptable.
Go ahead.